I've been working with ketamine for the last 5 years, and I would say that, there's been a lot of negative press about it, and there is still a lot of stigma associated with it. You do this intervention, and you get this incredible result. And I just knew that I had reached my limit with the conventional Western medical model, not really getting to the root cause of why people were suffering.
When you're going to be holding space for somebody, you have to make sure that you are okay.
Absolutely.
You have to do your own healing, your own discovery.
Absolutely. A total necessity.
Welcome to the Integrated Mind podcast, where we help you connect your mind, your body, and your soul. I'm your host, Bel Valladares Gottlieb, your integrated psychotherapist. And today I'm going to introduce a dear friend of mine. Her name is Kate, and she's a holistic nurse practitioner with a focus on integrative medicine as well as ketamine therapy. So welcome, Kate.
Thank you, Belle. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you for coming. So we've talked about a lot of the holistic therapies in the past. I've brought in from yoga to breath work to just general spirituality. Mm-hmm. But the ketamine ties so nicely to what I professionally do. Mm. And I've experienced this with you myself. Mm-hmm. So I thought it would be perfect to bring you on and you talk about the beauty of ketamine, what got you into ketamine, what sparked your interest, and what have you seen in your experiences with your patients and how it has worked for them. I know that was a lot of questions.
Yeah, but it's one of my favorite things to talk about, so thank you for asking me. I always say I'm a ketamine evangelist because there's really so much that I have to share about it, and so I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to share. Because I feel like, there's been a lot of negative press about it, and there is still a lot of stigma associated with it. So I'm happy to just share the positives, because I've been working with ketamine for the last 5 years, and I would say that overwhelmingly the results have always been positive. I really have never witnessed, I've only witnessed people go through profound transformations and achieve profound healing, lasting healing. And I've rarely ever witnessed anyone have a negative experience with it. So I'm just very grateful to be in this work. I find this work to be very fulfilling and rewarding. It's probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done, because you really see people, you see such profound change in people. It's one of the things in medicine that actually, like, you do this intervention and you get this incredible result from it. And that is just like, it feels really good to be able to.
It's a reciprocal experience.
Yeah, totally. How I got started in ketamine, I should say that my whole adult life, I was always interested in meditation and had a meditation practice. Got certified in Qigong 20 years ago or 22 years ago. That was the beginning of like my foray into energy work, subtle energy work. So I was always interested in consciousness work and this type of thing. And I was working for a hospital system in Miami, and I was studying integrative medicine and functional medicine on the side for many years. And I just knew that I had reached my limit with the conventional Western medical model, which felt like a lot of Band-Aid solutions and not really getting to the root cause of why people were suffering, whether that was physical illness and disease or mental illness and disease. So I was looking for other work. I applied for a job at a ketamine clinic as kind of a side job, And at that time, they asked me, do you have experience with psychedelics? And I was like, I don't really, but I've been meditating my whole life. So I've gone to all these crazy places, right? Like without the medicines, And I do energy work. So I think like that would be a good complement to what you guys are doing. So they hired me. And when I started working there, I thought, wow, this is really like, this is me. This combines all the elements of everything that I love. It's like music, as I was a DJ for many years. So
That's right. I forgot to mention.
yeah. So
There's so many parts of you.
yeah, I'm a multidimensional being. You know, I'm very Aquarian in that way. But yeah, I love music. I love, you know, to just really be able to, I think my strength is to show up for people and just provide a safe, loving space. And so I started doing that for them, and I just loved it so much. I mean, I just was like, wow. And they said, you know, when you're ready, you can try it. And I waited a little bit, and within a month or so, I tried it because I thought, you know, this, I really do believe that if you're going to be giving a medicine like this to someone, you should have experience with
Absolutely.
it yourself. I think that's really important.
I think for any facilitator and any of their expertise, and
Absolutely.
as a therapist myself, I'm a big believer, excuse me, that when you're going to be holding space for somebody, you have to make sure that you are okay.
Absolutely.
You have to do your own healing, your own discovery.
Absolutely. A total necessity, because they're going to feel what you're bringing into that room with them. And I always tell people, like, whether you work with me or you work with someone else, make sure that whoever you work with feels safe. You feel comfortable. Because if you don't feel safe and comfortable, you're not going to have the journey that you could have. And it's almost like a missed opportunity.
Absolutely.
So I have chills just talking about that with you, because that really is so important. So I decided, okay, let me try this, because, you know, I'm giving this medicine to people and I want to understand it, you know, more intimately. I really want to understand this molecule. And I'll never forget my first ketamine journey I had. During that time period, it was a very difficult period in my life. And
those are always the catapults.
Yeah. I would say that ketamine came into my life when I really needed it, but I didn't know how badly I needed it. My brain was I had really bad PTSD actually at the time. I had had a couple of miscarriages that were very difficult for me. And
it's okay.
Yeah. I had, you know,
I just got something.
Yeah. I had, you know, I was working a lot. My daughter was really young. I was going through a lot with my partner at that time. It was just a very difficult time. And I did this first ketamine journey, and I saw what I perceived to be like the energy of both of these beings that I had lost, with my grandmother, who had also recently passed away. And it was just like this knowing that I received, that like there was always this love that was always with me. You know, they were always with me. And it brought me such a sense of comfort, that it was the experience of comfort, right? Not something that I could talk about with my therapist or meditate on. It was the experience of being comforted and feeling this profound, loving energy that was so healing for me. And that was it. I was like, wow, okay, so I'm on board now. I'm a believer. And, you know, in addition to that, you know, we could get into all the science about ketamine and all the wonderful neurobiological benefits that it does for the brain. All those things are true, and they work. And I noticed that too. All of a sudden, I kind of got my brain back. I was able to focus better. I was more spacious as a parent. I was able to be more present. I wasn't as easily, you know, set off by things. There was really this...
I think you got peace for a time. It was kind of like a...
Yeah, I got...
like a reset.
And that's how most people describe ketamine. They say this is like the reset button. Like my whole system, my whole hard drive has been reset. And there's a lot of discussion about this in the psychedelic medicine space, about, you know, which medicines do what and how they work. And although ketamine is not technically described as a heart opener, you know, what I have found is it invariably does that for everybody. It takes it.
My experience was that.
Yeah.
My experience with you, I felt a sense of connectedness to everything.
Yeah.
I think I said that to you various times. Like, I feel connected. Like, I'm part of every
you had this.
Single
profound, like unity, what we call unity consciousness experience, where you knew you were one with everything and everything was one with you. And that is a beautiful thing. And a lot of people do experience that, not only with ketamine, but with other psychedelic medicines as well. That's a theme that comes up for people. And you can imagine how important that is, because for people who have felt isolated, for people who have felt alone, for people who connection is difficult, right? They have this profound experience of a knowing, like, wow, there's something bigger out there and I'm a part of it, and we're all a part of it. And so what I do impacts you and what you do impacts me, and it's all connected, you know? And the sacredness of that connection. And so I see people experience not only the heart opening, but profound gratitude. Gratitude is also a huge theme. Yeah. Huge theme. I mean, and, you know, and so the same thing also happened to me, obviously. So I continued to do the work. I did also do psychotherapy. I have a therapist who I love, and Lourdes. And so I do think therapy is a very important part of the process.
It's the integration.
Of course, the journey is one piece, but the integration, without integrating it.
Yeah, you could have the experience.
Yeah.
And then you have this window where you're more receptive to being able to change the way that you think. And that's where I feel like the therapy comes in.
Right.
That's where, if you have a good rapport with a therapist, after you have the ketamine experience, within a certain window, you have those discussions of how you feel, and then the therapist obviously uses the cognitive restructure in order to use that time to the client's benefit.
Right.
Because they're more malleable. They're more open to suggestion.
This is a neuroplastic window.
Exactly.
So ketamine increases BDNF and increases neuroplasticity. And so in this time is like this vital time where you want to rewire for more positive behaviors. So like journaling, dancing, anything art related, I encourage my patients to pick up an instrument. A lot of people love dancing, photography, journaling, all the things, like anything you can do that really just kind of puts your brain to work in novel ways is essential in the integration period. And then all the other behavioral stuff, like, okay, so let's say someone has this experience, for example, where they realize like, wow, I've been so unhappy in my marriage for the last 20 years, you know, sometimes it really is like that, you know. And so ketamine and psychedelics in general will kind of push you to do the thing that you've been delaying for a very long time, you know? And you find that a lot too. Like people will see me or whomever, and then like, you know, after 6 sessions, they're like, well, I filed for divorce and I feel really clear about it. Like I've been wanting to do this for a while, but I kept coming up with excuses.
We rationalize because we don't want to deal with what is unpleasant.
Of course. And change is terrifying for people.
Of course.
Right.
Even if it's positive.
Of course. And so, you know, we humans in our meat suit, we'll do anything not to feel uncomfortable, right? It's like,
that's how we're programmed.
Yeah.
We stay away from uncomfortableness.
Right. And so that's another big part of my work is I always try to remind people. I do a lot of mindfulness practices, meditation work with my people, the energy. Tell
me about the energy. So when you have your client and that person, I mean, I experienced it, but I want you to really explain how the experience would work for them and what you do while they're in their own place.
So first, what I try to do, what I think is really important, is to just establish the safety, right? Like when my patient comes in, I use a PEMF mat. I have them ground for a few minutes, and we talk about the intentions for the day. And in those moments, we're just like co-regulating our nervous systems together. We're just talking about things. They're getting more relaxed, and we're discussing like what is the intention. As you know, intention is so important, not only for what we do in the psychedelic medicine space, but for our lives in general. You know. So we discuss intentions. We prepare. And then when the patient does, obviously consent is also equally as important. So I make sure that whoever I'm working with is okay with touch And with energy work, I don't always have to touch you, but I always make sure that they consent to that, so that if they are having a difficult moment and they do want touch, and then we've already discussed it, then I will use touch. So what I try to do is, it's never the same for each person. It's always unique to what that person needs, and that applies to the music, how much energy work I do or don't do, the sound bowls I play at the end, which chakras I'm working on. After doing energy work for many years, I can get a sense of a lot of what people have kind of gone through in their lives without them really necessarily verbalizing
Tell me a little bit more about that. I know that our focus is ketamine, but it's something that you do as an adjunct, so I want to highlight it and talk a little bit about it.
Well, when you're used to working with energy, you're kind of like scanning the body for areas where energy is not flowing well, right? That's your chi, like your prana, your life force energy, right? Which we all have, which all living things have. And when you work with Reiki or with Qigong, similarly, you're just kind of scanning the body for where there may be density, where there's heaviness, where energy may feel stuck, or where energy feels like it's a little leaky, and just trying to bring people back into balance, into homeostasis, so that all their chakras are kind of, aligned and the energy is flowing freely. I also use tuning forks for that reason. So I like to start the session with tuning forks, and I kind of tune what we call like the biofield, and people really love that. Ketamine kind of comes on like a wave, because I do the injection. I do IM injection. And so as that wave comes on, I'm using the tuning forks, and it's just like this nice subtle vibration. And I find that it just allows people to really just relax and surrender. And I think the more relaxed people are, the more powerful experience they can have.
I agree with that.
And so that's part of the reason why I do the energy work, is because it helps people to get to a place where they feel relaxed and safe. I don't want to interfere with any process they're going to have. So I also, keep my boundary, so to speak. But if they do struggle in the journey, I just remind them, like, hey, you're safe. I'm here with you, and
that's why rapport is so important.
Yeah.
And building that trust, right, with you and in the moment.
Right. And honestly, I would say that for the most part, I rarely have that happen where people have a very scary or difficult journey. Ketamine is very gentle. And if it's given with someone who has, pure intentions, and the container, what we call a therapeutic container, is a safe container, then the person's able to really relax and have a peaceful journey. Whereas if it's not a safe container, they just can't, and then it will be a little bit more of a difficult journey. And, people would argue either way. Do you need to have a difficult journey? Do you not? For the most part with ketamine, probably the only experience that people have that may be a little bit frightening for them is the feeling of disassociation from your body. And that sometimes for people, they realize, wow, I don't have a body anymore. I'm out here. And so people will say to me like, oh, I was so far there. I didn't know if you're going to find me. Were you going to get me? Or are you going to be able to bring me back? So I always tell people before their journey, listen, you may go out of your body. Don't worry. I promise you.
I would be like, take me away.
Come back. I mean, for me.
It's just different.
No,
Obviously, everybody's different.
I'm just like you. When it's over, I'm like, oh, back in my body. Back in the meat suit,
Yeah.
I love being out there. And I tell people that. I'm like, because it's a new experience, you have a little fear around it, right? But then once you do it, you're like, wow, it's amazing. Like, I don't really want to feel my physical body. And so you can imagine for people who've experienced severe trauma.
That's what I was going to ask you something. Have you noticed a difference from people that are just anxious, like an anxious type, or more of a depressed type, or more of a traumatic?
All the above.
Can you tell from do you know from when you're meeting the person, do you know what would happen, like how they're going to react?
No, because it's so unique and individual to that person. But for the most part, Very rarely, the anxiety comes in more of like the questions beforehand and the control piece. So a lot of people who have anxiety also sometimes have these concurrent like OCD or control type personalities, type A.
Yes.
And need to know exactly like, well, and this is such a mind-blowing experience that it's like, listen, you're going to just have to experience this. I can't answer exactly how it's going to be for you because it's also different every time.
I always think about ketamine has a molecule that puts your body in a certain medical, I guess, or clinical situation, I would say, right? Breath work does very similar in a different way. So when I always recommend my clients to do breath work, I always say, don't worry about it. Your body's not going to give you or put you in a situation that you can't handle.
I totally agree.
So I would say it would be the same thing for ketamine.
Absolutely. And I profoundly trust in the innate wisdom and intelligence of the human body. The human body has so much intelligence beyond what we could ever understand. And I try to get people to understand that the more that they can surrender, the body knows what to do with these molecules. The body knows where to send it. If you're having chronic pain even, there's always an overlap, especially for women with autoimmunity, fibromyalgia, where they're holding pain and tension in their body. And ketamine will help with that too, of course. But it's different for everyone, obviously. But what I have observed is that women who've experienced severe trauma usually it's a break from their bodies. It's a break from their bodies for 2 hours. I'm not advocating that people are not embodied because I'm also certified in integrative somatic trauma therapy. So I'm big on body work and I love being in the body. But for the moment in that journey, it is profoundly healing for people to get a break.
Yeah. Your nervous system is on break. When you're in a traumatic response on a consistent basis, your sympathetic nervous system is always, that's why you're so exhausted at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're in that state, even we could have all the tools in the world, right? You can go to therapy, you can journal, you can, I do tapping with people. You can tap, you can meditate every day, you can chant mantra, you can do a million things. But if you're really in fight or flight, like you're not really getting anywhere,
That's a very trauma, PTSD,
right?
Complex trauma, that's a very heightened, it's like an extreme heightened with no pause. And I can see how using the molecule and being on the ketamine journey gives you that break.
Oh my God. And for moms, I just have to say, like all the moms that get ketamine, they're just like, oh my God. Like it's just such a break for them. And
maybe I needed it this morning. My son,
listen,
I love him to death. I love my little guy. He's amazing. But he doesn't stop talking and asking me questions as soon as he wakes up. It's a mommy. I'm just like, oh.
Yeah.
Just take a breath. Belle, relax.
Yeah. I mean, so it's interesting. Some people can have the most profound things happen in their journey. Oh, I saw my father who passed away and I could tell he was sorry for, or I saw XYZ or, I was doing this and I revisited this experience, but I could watch it like a movie and it didn't trigger me, and I was able to have compassion for the people that did this to me, whatever the experience is. And sometimes people just literally relax for an hour and they're like, oh, I just saw landscapes and I just felt so at peace and I was so relaxed. And I'm like, that's also okay, right? Sometimes we just need a break.
Yeah.
We live very stressful lives. We are very busy. We live in a very work-obsessed culture. And it's hard to balance everything. And if you're a working mom, it's hard to balance everything. And so
you feel guilty when you do something. And then you have to,
Yeah. And so I find that people sometimes just need like a little break, that reset. And then, of course, by taking that time for themselves to do that, they're able to go back to their lives with a renewed sense of vitality and energy and heightened awareness. And so, it's interesting to watch not only the healing in terms of depression and anxiety and PTSD and trauma and childhood trauma, all the things, but it's also been interesting to see how it really expands people's awareness and their consciousness. And that I've seen also. Like, I've seen people come in who were very rigid in their views, and then over time just become way more flexible, way more open.
And I think, and that's the key to everything, is awareness. If you're not aware of anything, like, you can be rigid and people tell you you're rigid, but if you don't feel you're rigid because this is what you know,
Right.
why would you change?
Right.
So when you start becoming aware, and through the ketamine or through doing mindfulness techniques, that's when you start becoming a little bit more aware, and that's where the transformation really begins. Obviously, the ketamine is kind of like a fast-paced, intense mindfulness experience, I guess you would say, something like that, that gives you that awareness that you feel at the same time, which is how your brain registers that as a real important moment.
Right.
Because if you don't feel things, how are you going to remember them? It has to be impactful. And I can see that through my experience. For me, like I mentioned to you, it was a lot of connection, a lot of gratefulness. I just wanted, it was love.
A big theme. Yeah.
You know, it's funny. This morning in my drive in, I was literally in the corner going to make a left, and I said to myself, you know what? It's all about love.
Exactly. It definitely.
Love.
Chills.
Love is everything. And I know a lot of people don't understand that. And it took me a while to actually get the concept of like what love is.
Yeah.
And going back to even like the Bible, everything was about love.
Yeah.
Before everything else.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's like these experiences people have, they're like, oh my God, I've never felt so much love. Like, I met God. It's like, you know, and that is, you know, one of my interpretations, I guess, as a spiritual person, is that is the highest frequency, right? Which is unconditional love. And people always say like, oh, what do you do with, what do you do that's so special with people? I'm like, I just love them.
That's a good one.
Like, I love them and I keep them safe. You know, and I'm sure that you know this, but like, people just want to feel seen and heard.
Yes.
And witnessed. I'm not here to fix you. That's not my job.
I say that to my clients all the time.
Right.
I say, I don't have a magic wand.
Right.
I'm not going to go doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. And you're going to be, this is a journey. This is a relationship. You know your life more than I. You're the one that lives it.
Right.
I'm here to help you see things in potentially different ways that are going to help you learn how to manage and make decisions that are more aligned to who you are.
Right.
Which is why, going back to what you talked about, the container, that's why that is so important.
So important.
Because how can you be heard or validated if the therapist or the other person on the other side is being triggered by what you're saying? So then you're in your own emotions and you're not holding that space for the other person.
Exactly.
The foundation, like you mentioned, is love and holding that space.
And I also believe in being really authentic. What you said there was, I'm really feeling that really, that hurts. I'm so sorry you had to experience that. I really feel the depth of how devastating that must have been for you. You know, I always acknowledge like, hey, I'm human too. And I'm, you know, but I also think it's really important, like you said, to do the work. I do the work on myself. I make sure that and if I don't feel like I can do it that day, then I might even reschedule somebody. It's maybe only happened to me once or twice, but I'm not going to show up for somebody if I can't show up for myself that day. Like, I have to have my practices. I do my practices every morning. I meditate every morning. I Reiki myself every morning. I do my practices so that I can be the container for people. And
that's why I don't fill up my schedule.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously as a therapist, I've worked with different agencies and private practices where there's more therapists. And I get the business aspect of like, oh, you need to see these many clients a week and blah, 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 and all of these things, which I understand. You need to make money. And obviously mental health is not a very lucrative.
And there's a lot of burnout, of course.
But that's the thing, the burnout.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because the reimbursements are so low and it's not as valued. Even people that pay cash, it's very hard to have a cash business because people are like, well, why am I going to waste so much money? They don't understand the importance of it.
Right. It's an investment in yourself.
Exactly.
But it's hard to get people to, yeah.
I mean, I digress there, but the point that I'm trying to say is when you're focused on what you're going to make that week, and I understand that some people need to be aware of that, but I'm not going to be booking 6 to 7 clients in a day.
No.
I'm not. I might make less money, but I rather be connected.
Yeah, it's self-preservation.
And be of value than just an hour that you're going to be like, oh, this is a waste.
Right. Because then you can't show up for those 6 or 7 people.
It's just not realistic.
It's not realistic. It's not
That's
not
a burnout.
Feasible. Yeah, it's not feasible. The way that I'm doing it right now is I book people for 3-hour sessions at a time. The journey itself is more or less an hour with the injection. But we process in the beginning and we process in the end. We process together. And a lot of people will say, well, but we discuss like the differences between ketamine clinics and what I do. And I'm like, this is different from that. Like when you go there, and there's no shade about that, but when you go there, you're kind of in a room by yourself and you may have a call bell. So if you have a difficult moment, you can call and someone may come in. And that's their business model. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's different from what I do. What I do is one-on-one. And, it is not covered by insurance also. So it is cash pay. So a lot of people will be like, wow, do I really want to spend the money on this? And I'm like, it really just depends how much you want to get out of, the experience, It's an investment in yourself and in your healing. And I've never, to this day, I have not given anyone ketamine who did not think that it was worth it, who did not see the value and the benefit in it. And I've worked at the at-home ketamine companies, prescribing lozenge for people to take at home. Those people did well. There's a lot of...
get something out of it regardless is probably how I feel.
Absolutely.
Or what I think.
Especially if you're doing it with intention and you're really mindful of how you're doing it,
But the maximizing the experience is, if you're going to do this, let's do it right.
I agree.
Not that it's wrong, but let's do it with a bigger intention.
Yeah, let's do it with a lot of intention and a lot of presence, deep presence, a lot of mindful awareness about someone who has a journey by themselves may have a profound journey. Of course they can. People have been doing psychedelics for how many years and, taking mushrooms in their house and, it's not, it's less about the right or wrong and more just about like, how can we create a system for people, I don't know if system's the right word, but how can we create an experience for people where they feel safe enough to really go deep, to explore the parts of their psyche maybe that have been hidden away. And I'm also a big fan of IFS, internal family systems, and parts work. And so that informs some of my work as well. And, it's just a way of bringing like everything that's been pushed away to the light with compassion and with love. Because you find that when you do that with people, they might say, oh, well, I realize, there's this part of me that needs to control everything, that needs to be in control constantly. And it's like, okay, well, we all have that to a certain degree. It's our ego mind. But, what is that part? What does that person look like? How does she dress? What's her name? So when she comes online, you can say to her, like,
I say that to my clients.
Chill out, girl. I got this. You don't need to stress so much. We're okay. We're safe. And just being loving to, oh, I know why you're here. Oh, you're trying to protect me.
Yes.
I know why you're here. You popped up because you feel like you need to keep me safe and you're scared and you're triggered right now, but we're okay. And it's just like being loving to that part. It's miraculous what that does for people, because you're just softening into compassion, which is...
And you're accepting all of who you are.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people tend to like one part of them and then shame the other part. So what you're doing is just creating another aspect of you that is going to come back to let you know, hey, you can't shut me out forever because I have a purpose.
Right.
My purpose is you need to rectify something, acknowledge something, embrace something. And the more you push it away, the worse it gets.
Of course.
And people have to understand that we have different facets of who we are.
Of course.
People call them shadows, a shadow part of us, work on your shadow inner child. There's so many different aspects of who we are that make us who we are.
Right.
It's just not this person that's showing up having this conversation with you.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So for my own personal work, I've done a lot of ketamine and IFS type work, and that's been incredible for me also, and just like accepting myself, accepting these parts of myself that may have felt shame or, and just also extending them compassion and, how profound that is. And when you do that, when you can incorporate that into your work with this molecule, which is so gentle and so relaxing, and you're really in this almost surrendered space, what happens, the healing is really, it's so profound. It's beyond like when a lot of people come on a journey, like, I can't even describe it. Like I can't, and it's
an
like,
experience.
It's what we call the ineffable experience, because it lacks, like, there are no words that could adequately convey. You're out there in the universe, you're a particle, like you're so zoomed out that you're like, whoa.
That's what happened to
I
me.
was dust I was stardust in the galaxies,
I felt like I was part of like the weave of what, it was like a different place.
Yeah.
I don't know how to articulate it. I don't know how to express it.
Yeah.
I want to get into the stigma behind it. Obviously in the news with Matthew Perry, how he OD'd and all of this stuff. Do you have anything that you want to share about that to kind of clear away the stigma behind it or the fear behind it? I mean, before you start, ketamine is used consistently every day in the operating room.
Very safely in the operating room, in the emergency room, as an anesthetic. We give it to children. It's very safe. So the safety we know, that's been established. I would say that, sadly, addiction is a real problem in our country and in the world, and most of that is rooted in unhealed traumas or traumas that have never been addressed, right? Most people, my experience working with ketamine is that most people end up not wanting to drink anymore, not wanting to smoke weed anymore, not wanting to numb themselves anymore. They just don't have the desire to do it after doing ketamine. So now there's more studies being done for ketamine and alcoholism, which I've seen anecdotally over the years, but now they're actually doing the studies to show that ketamine is really great for addiction. That being said, anyone could abuse anything. If we have an addictive personality and we're not in check and we're cycling out of control.
And we don't have a therapist to support us through that.
Or we have people who are not prescribing us
the adequate
in an ethical way, which happened. So I always tell my patients, like, I think Matthew Perry was taking 360 milligrams of ketamine. That was his dose. And I always say, like, that's not a ketamine journey dose. That's an anesthetic dose. And I'm giving you today for your first journey 30 milligrams, which is not even 10% of what he took. And I can guarantee you, you're going to have a profound experience because the container is safe. And that it's not about the milligrams always. But just to give you the idea of the type of dose he was taking, it wasn't a safe dose. And then, of course, he got in a hot tub.
Oh, that lowers your blood pressure.
You wouldn't get in a hot tub when you're drinking. So you definitely, I
did that once. I almost passed out. I didn't know. This was many years ago. many moons ago.
So there's so many factors there, right? And it's unfortunate that ketamine gets the blame, right?
Exactly. That's why I wanted to talk about it, because I had mentioned the potential for ketamine to one of my patients, and the first thing that came out of their mouth was, Matthew Perry, did you just die from that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, but just like everything,
I mean, people are dying in alcohol-related deaths every single day. It's like one of the leading causes of death. So, I mean,
Everything can
but
kill you
but
essentially if it's done
socially,
irresponsible.
right? But socially, it's so accepted. It's such a part of our culture that nobody even questions it anymore. Not to mention, it's linked to
Cancer
so many
now.
cancer, so many illnesses and diseases. I mean, you name it. But again, it's the way we as a culture frame things, and I think that this is the time for psychedelic medicines. Is really a movement, and I think it's the way of the future to treat
Actually,
mental health.
yes. Actually, I think it was yesterday that I saw the FDA approved ketamine as a standalone treatment
Yep.
for mental health conditions.
Yeah.
I mean, that for the FDA, so it started off ketamine and all of the other psychedelics as kind of like, oh, these are for people, they're hippies, they want to go try something, all that stuff.
Right.
I mean, to the point now that it has been researched excessively and found the efficacy of how this drug helps with trauma, PTSD, depression. They're looking at OCD and eating disorders. They're looking at such a large realm of mental health conditions and how this drug is so impactful with neuroplasticity. And that's the magic there, scientifically speaking here, is the neuroplasticity. For those of you that don't know what neuroplasticity is, it's basically your brain has the capacity to change the wiring that it already has. And how it does that is ketamine enhances that neuroplasticity, that gateway where you can reorganize or rewire your brain to work in a more beneficial, more practical, more advantageous way to help you be able to feel better by the way that you think, because how we think is how we feel. So that's what neuroplasticity, and it's been shown how neuroplasticity increases with ketamine.
Right, and it also causes NMDA receptor antagonism, which is really helpful for people with PTSD. It kind of blocks those intrusive thoughts that are so common with PTSD, turns off the default mode network in the brain. It's a robust antidepressant. I mean, like the data is, the science is very clear.
Glutathione, I heard something about the glutathione and how it boosts the glutathione in your gut.
It causes I think you mean the glutamate surge. It causes the glutamate surge in the brain. No. But there's also a study that it also helps the gut too, and it's anti-inflammatory in the brain. And I think that also is really important to address because inflammation is a driver for depression.
Yes.
So we can't talk about, and so I work in integrative medicine, so yeah, I do energy, all these other things, but I also really care about how people are eating, how they're living, how they're sleeping, what their stress is like, and what their gut microbiome looks like. And so if you're eating a pro-inflammatory diet and it's not nutrient dense, and you're not getting the B vitamins you need for your neurotransmitters, and there's all this inflammation here, and the gut-brain connection has been established and it's sending signals of stress to the brain back to the gut. And, I think that people miss how important that is. And so I think a lot of why people get relief with ketamine is because of the tremendous anti-inflammatory power that ketamine has in the brain. A lot of Americans especially are inflamed.
Oh, yeah.
We're chronically inflamed. And so that's where I also come in with high dose omegas. I put all my patients on omegas, spore-based probiotics, big on that as well. And just tailoring diets so that, hey, I'm not here to shame you, but I would like you to make better choices to eat a more whole foods diet and try to eliminate the processed foods. So that's why, it's holistic, right? Because it's all the pieces come together. If I just focused on this, we're missing everything else, right? And if I only focused on the gut and I didn't, everything is
connected.
Yeah, we're biological systems. All these systems impact each other, whether you want to call them chakras or you want to call them, my kidneys, my gut, whatever. Everything needs to be charged, to be functioning well, to be functioning optimally.
Reciprocal. I mean, if you think about it, every relationship is reciprocal, right? If you look at our physical body, we have components. We have our brain, we have our heart, we have our kidneys, we have all of these things.
Right.
If one is malfunctioning, there's no reciprocity either.
Right.
And also, we are all connected, right? So the same thing is happening with our physical self. All of the parts of who we are, meaning physically, are all connected.
Right.
So it's the same thing. It's reciprocity. It's connection. It's not, I'm not going to touch this if I'm going to touch that, which is kind of how the Western medicine culture really treats individuals.
Right.
It's you go over here. If you have a back problem, you go over here.
Right.
If you have a GI problem, and you go to a psychiatrist if you have a mental health problem.
Right.
Right? Not all psychiatrists, but which is, again, my purpose as well. I look a lot at what's your sleep hygiene, what are you eating? And I don't say, don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat that.
Right.
But we start talking about what are some things that you can replace.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think that it's important to, like you just mentioned, how like the separation, like humans, we're wired for connection and we're wired for community. That's how we thrived for thousands and thousands of years.
We're heard.
Yeah. And people doing everything in isolation, you notice there's a lot of suffering that happens in silence. And, you know, I always find it interesting when I do groups, like
that's another thing that we're going to talk about.
Or group ketamine retreats, like there's themes that connect the whole group together, even though all these people came in as strangers. But yet they all may have like a similar theme in their journey, or they all, and equally so, there is never a patient or a person that I treat that something about their experience doesn't resonate with me as a human, you know, and that I don't get some degree of healing from just the witnessing of their experience, right? And that's really important. It's just the witnessing. Like, it'd be arrogant for me to think I can heal you, I can fix you, but I can be with you here and I can witness you and I can acknowledge your pain and your suffering. I feel like I'm deeply compassionate, so that's one of my strengths, is to be empathetic, you know, like, wow, I'm so sorry you experienced that. That also is just something people need, you know? And so
I want to start thinking about like group works. How does that work for the groups? So people would think, okay, I want my private stuff. You know, people are a little bit more private. How do you go about it with group work?
Usually I do small groups. Sometimes it's in a retreat setting, sometimes it's not. Depends how many people are co-facilitating with me, but I usually don't do more than like 6 or 8 people at a time. I've done some women's retreats that have been groups. And, you know, if you're working with a group of women, there's a lot of themes that come up: of motherhood, of stress, I feel like I'm not good enough, perfectionism, you know, there's all these little themes that may pop up. But even when it's mixed sex, you find that the themes come up. You, just the same, create a beautiful container for the space. Really great music. The music is so important in ketamine.
Yeah, because you're in a different world.
I can't stress that enough. The music is literally going to carry you on your journey. So
how do you pick the music? I know I'm asking you a ton of questions.
Oh, that's okay. I love all these questions. So I do it intuitively. I could answer you another way, but that's the way that I do it. You know, my intuition is strong and it informs a lot of my work. And I look at the person and I know this would be good for them. This would help them. You definitely don't want lyrics when you're listening to ketamine, especially if you're a beginner, you know, because lyrics can be a distraction. And everyone has different philosophies about it. A lot of people like to taper their playlist so that they kind of like increase in speed and tempo to the peak and then kind of taper off. I like that, but I also think that like too dancey, you kind of get like, you can't dance, but in your mind you're thinking, wow, I would like to dance right now. You know, it's kind of, so most of the music I use for ketamine is very like ethereal, a lot of frequencies. I use a lot of frequencies, solfeggio frequencies, crystal sound bowls, vocalizations, but not lyrics.
I get it.
Like Ashana, Chantra Siva, this woman has beautiful voice. Yeah, the music really, honestly, is like your companion. And it creates the whole landscape for the journey. So the music piece is so important, so important. And, I've had people who've come to me who've done ketamine other places. They're like, oh, they just put me in a room with no music and I stared at the wall for 2 hours. And I'm like, ah.
No, I mean, covering the eyes, like really going within and really exploring what's inside.
Yeah.
How many sessions do you suggest for people?
The way that it's been studied for depression is 6. So usually people find great relief after 6, but they usually start to notice a real shift around the 3rd session.
Okay.
Most people, in mood and lightness of being, energy levels, people who maybe weren't even bathing are bathing. Ketamine is also very effective for suicidality, for active suicidality. So usually the way that it's been studied is 6, but on a person-to-person basis, if someone finds that after 6 they want to continue to do the work with ketamine, then they can consider doing maintenance dosing, and then maybe they do it once a month or twice a month, always with intentionality, always treated very, like this is a ceremony. This is something we're doing together that's really important. This isn't an afterthought. It's not like you pop a antidepressant, you know what I mean? Like this
And you carry on with your day.
Yeah, no, that's not what we're doing here.
So you do oral, you do IM. Tell me all the different ways that you do them.
Yeah, so there's all different ways to take ketamine. The most bioavailable ways is IV or IM. I did IV when I first started working in clinics. And a lot of people like that. I think that being attached to the IV and being attached to the machine makes it more of a medical experience. And you're aware that that's happening. So when I went to do the ketamine training with Phil Wolfson's group, we did the IM experience. That was the first time I experienced it, IM, which was several years ago. And I just thought, this is the way to do it. Why were we doing IV? And so we kind of changed, the place I was working at the time, we changed to doing IM. Then I worked for several years prescribing lozenge for people at an at-home ketamine company. When you take it in lozenge, you have to take a much higher dose because the bioavailability is very poor.
I think it's like 30%.
Not even. It's like 20 maybe if you're lucky. I will say that I've had some of my most beautiful journeys in life on lozenge. I do think that lozenge is very beneficial. Price-wise, it's a lot easier for people to afford. And I really strongly believe that people should have access to these medicines. That's a point I want to make. Ideally, it would be easier for them to have access without it being such an expense.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. Like some things that I'm trying to structure, because that's something that I'm going to start applying in my practice, is the ketamine. I'm trying to figure out how I can, because obviously a lot of clients would potentially want me present with their experience.
Right.
Just a sense of comfort, a sense of, I mean, you have the option of not, but when you do, since it's not an hour, it's a little bit more than an hour. In my mind, I'm like, okay, I'll charge the regular hour through the insurance and then figure out a way, a different rate for the excess time. And that obviously, because you have prep, you have discussions, you have goals, you set intentions. So it is a therapeutic process initially. Obviously, it just takes longer. So in my mind, I'm trying to figure out a way that to create a package to be accessible to everyone.
So the other pro or kind of positive thing about lozenge is that it's a longer journey. It takes longer to kick in and to peak, and then it tapers off a little bit more slowly. Whereas, you get the injection within 3 to 5 minutes, rocket ship blast off to the next dimension. But there's less fogginess. You're bypassing the phase 2, the metabolism in the liver. There's nothing getting swallowed, and it's just directly into the bloodstream. So yeah, there's all different ways to take it. Either way, whichever way you take it, it's effective and it's going to work. It's just all about what works for you, what your budget is, how you want to experience it, how safe you feel.
Because you can do it on your own in your home if you feel.
You can. And I worked at a company that did that for years, and we found that people found tremendous benefit, and they did get relief from their depression. And it was the best that they could afford at that time. The reality is that a lot of people can't afford psychotherapy, sadly. You know, do we all
Don't
need
have
it?
insurance, yeah.
Yeah, do we all need it? Absolutely. I think it should be like mandated.
I think
for
so
every
too.
human on earth.
I think so too.
I'm a huge advocate for it. But the reality is that a lot of people can't afford it. I still think that people should have access to it. And so I do think that if you are going to take it at home, then you want to at least have somebody on board, you know, to help you through the process. And there's a lot of psychedelic integration coaches now. There's people who are experienced in the psychedelic landscape who can help you navigate and integrate a psychedelic experience. They're not necessarily psychotherapists, but they are coaches and guides, and they know what they're doing. And, you know, they have their own place in this space too. And so I work with a lot of them. I refer a lot of my patients to them sometimes, you know, or I work in conjunction with them, like, oh, this person might need some coaching. And so that's also a great thing to do. I do sometimes prescribe suppositories for people who get too nauseous and can't take it orally. I don't do that often, but sometimes I'll prescribe it that way. But for the most part, what I do in my own work right now is just the injection.
Okay.
It's easy, it's simple, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful experience.
It is a beautiful experience.
Yeah, it's a beautiful experience.
So, Kate, where can people find you? Tell them where they can find you if you're interested in having a session, or just experiencing it, or having a deeper conversation with you.
Okay. So right now I'm at Hyperbaric Medical Solutions in Miami. It's a hyperbaric practice, and we do integrative medicine, anti-aging, regenerative medicine, and then I have my own office in that space, in this hyperbaric center, and I do ketamine there 3 days a week.
Okay.
So it's on 39th and Biscayne in Miami. And Hyperbaric Medical Solutions. We have a website, and there's a section on the website that people can access. If they're curious about doing ketamine therapy, they can click on that. They can do a screening. I'll reach out to them. Okay. So that's really the best way right now if you want to see me in person.
Okay. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing what ketamine is and the experience of ketamine and how beneficial it could be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.